the guy working that part of the system was very adamant that yes, you are going to tip him. And I waited in line, I get to the guy, I'm about to get stamped out, and he's like, try again. Try again? I've never tried to leave a country and the guy says try again. He said,
focus, man.
What's good, everybody? Once again, this is your man Jay Focus reminding you to stay focused. And with that said, let's get right into it. Now, disclaimer, this video is going to make some people mad. This video is going to make some people shake their head and say, okay, I agree with that, but I got to give some background before I introduce this topic because this is a very big topic. Now, if you've ever Googled anything, searched on YouTube for anything about this country, Burundi, you're going to notice pretty much two narratives that are being pushed. So everything is going to be about how poor Burundi is, right? So there's a YouTuber, I'm going to pronounce his name wrong. It's Ruhi Sinet, R-U-H-I, and he has 22 million views, and he's a non-African, of course. And in his video, he's basically showing the most negative things you can think of about Burundi, only talking about the poverty, not showing any hope, not giving a balanced perspective. Now, on the other side of the spectrum, you've got some black YouTubers who are just, looking at everything through rose-colored glasses, and they're not being, one could say, honest about the actual situation on the ground in Burundi. Now, on this channel, I want to do something in the middle. I want to be honest. I want to give you not doom and gloom, and I also don't want to give you pie in the sky, inaccurate things. I want to give you something that's going to be usable and realistic for the average person who might be thinking about visiting Burundi, who might be thinking of investing in Burundi. So I'm going to break down my whole experience there. Now, to begin with, my experience in Burundi, the first impression I got was before I actually went to the country. So for Burundi, if you're coming from most Western states, you are going to need to secure a visa. Now, it may be possible to get that on arrival. It may not be possible to get that on arrival. I'm not going to bore you guys with the details of that. There's an entirely different video I did on the subject, and that video is titled something like Getting the Burundi Visa. So if you need that information, go ahead. There should be a link at the end of this video. If not, you can search in the main page of my channel and you will find a Burundi visa video. Okay, so we're not going to rehash that. What I'm going to talk about is once I already had my visa and I arrived to Burundi, what was that experience like? So I decided to come to Burundi from Kigali, Rwanda, which is the country right next to Burundi. It's another small country in Eastern Central Africa, right on the border between Central and Eastern Africa. Now, I arrived by bus coming from Kigali. It was hectic. We left a little bit later than we were supposed to. So the company that I used was Volcano Express. So this one is very well known. There is another one, what's the name? There's another one named Modern Coach, and that one also does the same route. Now, you may also be able to arrange your travel separately through a private car. I'm sure there are some vans and private cars that will leave from the main bus station in Burundi, so that may be a little bit more comfortable option. Looking back in hindsight, if I did have that option, I would have paid a little bit more and just got in a van or a small car instead of going the bus, and I'm going to explain why. So when you're traveling in the bus, you are much more susceptible to delays for a number of reasons. Now, number one, the buses don't leave on time. So that already is a reason not to take the buses. They might say they leave at 8 and it may not leave till 8:40. Why, I can't tell you exactly, but they wait until the bus is entirely full, and that may take a while, even though people buy their tickets in advance. So I had purchased my ticket for Volcano Express about a week in advance because I knew exactly when I wanted to travel, and I figured if I reserve this seat, they're going to respect my seat and it's going to be a little bit more comfortable. Now, I was in for a shock because when I arrived, I had my ticket, I had my seating number and everything. The bus was set aside by numbers, by rows. So you would think that would be respected, but it was not. I got there on time, not late, actually a little bit early, and someone was in my seat and I said something and they said, that's just the way it is. This is, we're not going to get involved with that. So that straight off was disappointing. And again, that was Volcano Express. And it's my understanding that it's the same with all the other companies like Modern Coach as well. Unless maybe if you pay extra for VIP, they will respect your seat. Now, Volcano Express did not have that option to pay extra. I would have paid a couple more dollars to have a more comfortable seat that was respected. Now, getting that out of the way, you're gonna put your bags, if you're carrying a suitcase or something larger, underneath the bus, and you will be expected to tip for that. That's not even really a negotiable thing. You are gonna tip, it's just how much are you gonna tip? So you can mess around and not tip and then not get your bag when you get to your destination. How much are you gonna tip? So you can mess around and not tip and then not get your bag when you get to your destination or anything else. But the guy working that part of the system was very adamant that yes, you are going to tip him. And I wasn't even too surprised by that because even in Latin America, Argentina, other countries that are developing economies, they are going to expect some kind of a tip. Now, it's not crazy. It could be as little as $1, but you are going to need to give them a token something. And you want to know that going into the process. And even locals in many of these countries will have to do it. So it's not just, I'm a foreigner, I'm a Muzungu, they're trying to charge me. Now, they may try and charge you more, but pretty much everyone gives them a little something, okay? So now, the ride from Kigali to Burundi, I was expecting this was going to be more or less a direct bus, but it was far from it. We made numerous stops, and not just stops to use the restroom and to grab a bite to eat. No, we were just making stops and stops and stops. Now, Google said that the ride was supposed to take, I believe, 6.5 hours direct from doorstep to doorstep from Kigali to Bujumbura, the capital of Burundi. And that definitely wasn't the case. Instead of taking about 7 hours, 7.5 hours, you could say, because of the border, it ended up taking a little over 12 hours. And that was a surprise to me. I thought, okay, that Google was saying 7 hours, I can expect to be there in about 9.5, right? No, so we left around, well, it was supposed to leave at 8. We were supposed to leave at 8. By the time we actually got to the center of Bujumbura, it was about 8 p.m. So 8 a.m. to 8 p.m., about 12 hours total. You want to plan for that. Of course, if you're flying in from somewhere else in East Africa, forget everything I said about the buses. That's not going to be your deal. You're going to deal with something completely different. The airports, and I'm going to speak about the airports as well because I did take the bus into the country, but I also flew out of the country. So I wanted to have both experiences, right? So now I'm going to speak about once I got to the border. So my first impressions on coming into the country was it was quite disorganized. I had previously been through borders in East Africa by bus. I had gone through the border for Uganda. I had gone through the border for Kenya. I had gone through the border from Rwanda. So it's not like I don't have any experience in this region. And it was, like I said, a bit of a disorganized process as far as you couldn't really tell what was going on. Now, thankfully, it is a much less busy border than those other East African countries that I mentioned. So at the time we arrived, it was during the day, maybe around noon, somewhere around there. There were not that many people waiting. So it was easy enough to see what was going on, but nobody was directing us at any point. So it was just kind of like watch and follow and figure things out as you go along. So thankfully I had experience from those other countries, so I kind of understood what the process is. But if it was your first time and you're coming directly from Kigali, you might be a little bit lost about how to proceed. So the first thing you're going to do, you're going to get off the bus, and to your left, you're not going to take everything off. So your suitcase and everything that's underneath the bus, that's going to stay. You're going to take your backpack and whatever else you're carrying with you by hand, by back, whatever you want to call it. You're going to take that with you off of the bus, and you're going to line up behind everyone else, and there is a window. And that window moved very, very slow. For the amount of people there, it took way more time than you would expect. So we get to the thing, and this is just to exit from Rwanda. So forget everything I said about Burundi, because we were still in Rwanda. So there's a long line. You get stamped out, then you cross. There's a big sign, a big arch that says Burundi. So you're gonna walk, and like I said, no one tells you this. You're gonna walk through this arch. Very quiet border. Not a lot of people hassling you. A few money changers will come up, but they're pretty much harmless. They don't follow you or anything. So you're gonna cross there. Then there is a small, what do you call it? Like a trailer. A small trailer that you can walk into, and inside of there is the health check. Now, like I said, there's no one explaining this to you. You could easily bypass this trailer because there weren't that many people in line. So you go in this trailer, guy takes your information, asks for your phone number. Very quick, he checks your temperature on your forehead. After that, you proceed to continue walking. I don't think he stamps anything, but he does give you some kind of a check. I don't know how they relay that information to the actual border. So you continue to walk, and you're gonna stop, and you're gonna see the actual immigration thing. And this is the long line. So even though there's not that many people using it during the day, this was on a weekday when I went, it's still a very long line because it doesn't move. And so you're waiting there for at least an hour. At the very least, it's an hour. And at some point, the bus, the Volcano Express or whatever bus company you're using, is going to cross the border as well. It's going to come behind you. You're going to get off first, as I said, and it's going to park right where that customs check is. So there's going to be an agent going to be sitting there at a small table, and the way it works is first you're going to get in the long line, and you're going to get stamped into the country. Once you're stamped into the country, then you come back around, you go backwards, and then you get your suitcase or whatever, and it's already going to be unloaded for you from the people that work for the bus company. And there you have the customs guy, and they're going to look for your passport. They're going to make sure you have the stamp of Burundi, and then at that point, they are going to determine what to do with your luggage. Now, what they're going to do is going to depend on many factors, whether you look foreign, whether you look like you have some money, whether they're bored. It's no rhyme or reason. It's going to depend on the agent. Now, what happened with me, I was with a person from Rwanda. I was with a Rwandan person, and they saw me. They didn't speak with me. They spoke to my Rwandan person in Kenya, Rwanda, the Burundian version, and basically explained to the person I was with that, look, if he wants to get his luggage, he's going to have to bribe me. And this information was relayed to me by the person I was traveling with. And I'm sitting there like, nah, I'm not going to go that route. So it was kind of a standoff. And luckily, my bus was leaving. So they were sitting there just kind of playing the poker face. I'm giving the poker face. And I'm sitting there like, look, if you want to open my luggage, open it. I have nothing to hide, but I don't feel like I should pay you anything. I already paid for the visa, and this is a really bad first impression to come to the country. Now, I don't want to say this is every Burundian, everyone's experience is going to be like this, but this was my experience. And this official was very adamant about getting a bribe. So we kind of sat there for a few minutes. And at some point, the guy who was the transportation courier, the guy who unloads the baggage and works for the bus company, he ran up to me and was just like, look, the bus is going, like, we gotta go. And I think because of that, the fact that I wasn't gonna move, and the official saw that and saw that the guy who worked for the company was, trying to expedite the process, he was just like, all right, you know what, just go. I see you guys traveling together. You guys are a couple. I'm just gonna let you guys go. And so I was able to not pay a bribe, but I see how another foreigner who was not in the same situation as me would be forced to pay a bribe or would feel like they were under pressure to pay a bribe. So from there, we loaded everything. We got back on the bus and we moseyed on down to Bujumbura. Now, that was not the end of the trip. This is maybe the halfway point. It was still a very long time to get into the city, several more hours. The roads were not bad. I thought the roads would be a lot worse. There was a lot of traffic, especially as soon as we started to get closer into the city. But the road condition could have been a lot worse, especially based on the reputation of hearing that this is the poorest country in Africa and by extension, the world. I was expecting really horrible roads. Now, the poverty I saw through the window of the bus getting into the capital was very bad. It was among the worst that I've seen. I think the only other place I've been that would be comparable would be Madagascar. Now, they say Madagascar is also within the top 10 poorest countries in the world. And in both countries, you can feel it in the rural areas. You can really feel that, okay, these people are down bad. There's a lot of development that needs to happen. And it's just such a contrast when you're coming from Rwanda, which Rwanda is not perfect. Rwanda is not the Switzerland of Africa yet, which is one of the labels they want to put on it. And I feel like people exaggerate how developed and how perhaps wealthy Rwanda is, and they over-exaggerate how poor Burundi is. And there is some truth to both the narratives, but it's exaggerated. I will say that there is a contrast. So when you cross the border, you definitely notice that you're not in the other country anymore. Now, once we finally got to the capital, to Bujumbura, we arrived to the bus, the bus depot where the buses park, and it was a very chaotic experience. It was dark already. I left in the morning when it was dark. I arrived in Bujumbura when it was dark. So very dark. I had luggage. I had to go underneath the bus, make sure that was still where it was supposed to be. I'm surrounded by taxis and stuff. So I grabbed the first taxi I could find, made my way to the hotel. I didn't even have money. I didn't even have the local money exchange yet. So I just wanted to get a taxi and get up out of that area, because I'm sure at nighttime after dark, it's not going to be the safest area. I'm clearly foreign. I'm going to get unwanted attention. So I just wanted to rest after that long bus ride. So I hop in the taxi. Taxi guy was very chill. Had to speak with him in French. I didn't mention that before, but unlike Rwanda, where you can get by with English, in Bujumbura, you really are going to need French to get by. If not French, then you're going to need the local language, which I'm sure 90% of people watching this video are not going to speak. So your best bet is going to be French. English is probably just going to get confused looks from most people. Very basic French. You're not going to need to know crazy amount of words. You're just going to need to know how to say pretty much where you're going, the neighborhood. So I was staying in Cabando, so I said Cabando, like je veux. Everyone's gonna judge my French now, but I basically just said je vais à Cabando, which is I'm going to Cabando, right? And the guy understood that. Once we got to near Cabando, I told him the name of my hotel, which is a very famous hotel. So it was, very easy communication. So we got to my hotel, and this is where it got kind of tricky because I didn't have any local money. I had a little bit of money in Rwandan, but not enough to pay this guy. So I believe he charged me the equivalent of about $5 to get there. I didn't have to negotiate too much with him, but it was the equivalent of, let's say, around $5. And so we arrive, and I didn't have local money, but I did have US dollars. And so I explained to the guy, look, I've got dollars, and he just was like paused. Like he didn't even compute it. And I was like, look, man, you're actually gonna make out on this deal because I'm gonna give you dollars and I'm gonna actually overpay you. And he was just kind of like scratching his head like, all right, how do I give this guy change back in Burundian? And I was like, look, dude, don't even worry, just keep the change. And he was like, oh, okay, cool. You know, he processed it afterward. And so that was my initial voyage coming from Kigali to Burundi. So go ahead, like the video if you haven't done it already. They say it's free, Jesus paid for it, so it's not gonna cost you anything. Subscribe to the channel if you like this video, you found it informative. And I'm gonna continue and really break down what I experienced once I was already in Burundi, in Bujumbura, what happened after I settled in, okay? All right, so after I got to Bujumbura, I got to my hotel, I had that long ride, I was able to exhale and relax a little bit. I had some food up in the restaurant inside of my hotel. My hotel was very, very nice. It was one of the better hotels I've stayed in, not only in Africa, but in my life. It was very professionally run, and there were 2 restaurants on site. There was a very big swimming pool, actually 2 swimming pools, a larger one and a smaller one for children, or just people who don't want to go in deep. And what else? Very nice green space right on the Lake Tanganyika, which is the lake that the capital is set on. So very nice view. I have 0 complaints about this hotel. The hotel was called Safari Gate, so I can highly recommend that one. Or if you look on the map, any of the hotels in that same neighborhood of Cabando are going to be very, very nice and to an international standard. So now that you have that information to kind of know where you would like to base yourself if you're going to come visit Burundi, I will say the rest of the city is very different. So Cabando is kind of a bubble inside of the city. A lot of the areas along the coast of the lake are going to be nicer than what the average Burundian experiences. So from Cabando neighborhood and the lake to get to the downtown, the central areas, is about a 20-minute walk, give or take. And that's when you kind of get back into the reality of what the country is and what things are like for the average Burundian. So the first thing you're gonna notice if you're coming from Rwanda, from Kigali, is that this is a very different city. So first thing is the driving. So in Burundi, they drive on the British side of the road. And in Kigali, they drive like the American way. And this is the first shocker. Now, the second is that you don't see motorcycles. So in Kigali, everywhere you look, you're gonna see motorcycles, and they're pretty safe. They have helmets for the passengers, and they drive in a very controlled manner. Now, in Burundi, no motorcycles. Forget about that. Forget apps. You're gonna have to do it old school, like it's the 90s. You got taxi drivers, and you're gonna have to negotiate with them. You're not gonna be able to do anything with the apps. So this is a different reality, and also the driving is a lot crazier in Burundi. So in Burundi, there's not that many cars on the road actually, but they drive like it's NASCAR. And you don't have that in Rwanda as much. In Rwanda, they're pretty chill, generally respectful of the road signs, and there's a lot of roundabouts and those kind of things that control the traffic. And also it's not uncommon to see actual road guards, policemen in the middle of the streets who are directing traffic this way, directing traffic the other way. So there's a lot of control. Now Burundi is not like that. Burundi is kind of every man for themselves to some degree. Not a lot of cars, but the cars that are there, they do not look out for passengers. So you need to be hyper aware. Do not let your guard down if you're coming from Rwanda. Now, that being said, there is very little care taken for for pedestrians. There's very little care taken for pedestrians in the city. So often there is no sidewalk, or if there is a sidewalk, the sidewalk is very deteriorated. So it's not the most pleasant experience to walk around Bujumbura. Also, I will say there's a lot more trash. There's visibly more trash than you would see in Rwanda. Rwanda has a reputation and the accolades of being the cleanest city in Africa. And from what I've seen, they really deserve that title. Now, Bujumbura is far from that. I would hope that they get to that point. They look at their neighbors across the border who are of the same actual ethnicity, the same background, and if they were able to do it, they can do it in Burundi as well. But at the time I made this video, they are very far from it. There's trash in many parts of the city. It doesn't look as well maintained as it did in Rwanda. So they have a long ways to go. That being said, I didn't feel unsafe when I went around the city during the daytime, during the early evening. I did not walk around the downtown areas at nighttime, but in the early evening, in the afternoon, in the morning, I had no issues as far as feeling unsafe. I did get extra attention, and that could be because of the hair. Could be because I'm clearly a foreigner. I'm not a local Burundian. I'm gonna pause for the cause. I need to get some water. I tried to do this in one take, but hold on a second. I'll probably edit this out, and if I didn't have time to, so just bear with me. So from the downtown area, walking around, there's very little of interest. There are some very tiny parks, but the parks were closed, and that surprised me. You know, the typical city parks where they have some kind of a statue to some leader or some kind of a plaque talking about some kind of history, independence, those kind of things. Every small park like that I saw in the center of the city was closed. So very disappointing. And the ones that weren't closed, it seemed like people were living in them. And I don't mean just like one or two people. I mean, the entire park had been converted into a living space where I'm talking about large tents, not just, you know, a single tent for 4 people to live in. No, these were huge tents for maybe 30 different people that I saw in these little parks in Bujumbura, and they were very dirty, unkempt, and it seemed like they were tapered off. They had barriers so no one could enter. So after that, I got to the main strip of the downtown where all the businesses are, where all the banks and things were. Now, the first thing I wanted to do as I just arrived to the country, I had no cash, was I wanted to go to an ATM and get some cash, because unlike Rwanda and unlike many other countries in East Africa, there is still a very strong caste society in Burundi. And so I wanted to have some cash for taxi drivers and whatnot. So I can't always be giving out US dollars to people when I want to buy things in the country. So I went to several banks and I was rejected at all of them. And it wasn't the fact that I had a foreign debit card, it was the fact that most of the ATMs did not have any money. I saw local people attempting to go to the same ATMs using their local cards, and they were walking away empty-handed as well. I had to speak with many different security guards in front of banks in French to ask, where is the ATM? They would point me to the ATM, I would try to use it, and it would be a no-go. So finally, after about 7 different banks, one did actually have money for me, and the name escapes me. If it comes back to me, I'll try and put it below. But if you want to get money, just do not be discouraged. Your foreign cards will work in the country, probably if they're coming from the States or Europe, but every ATM is not going to have money. And this was not on a weekend, this was on a weekday. So I was really surprised that I had to go to so many ATMs to finally get money. I did not have this experience in Rwanda whatsoever. I think the first or the second, probably the first ATM that I went to when I first arrived in Rwanda worked for me. And after I was in the country for more time and I went to other ATMs when I needed to get more cash, every single one of them worked for me. So it was never a thing where I was going and searching out an ATM from a specific bank. I was able to use essentially every ATM in the country. So prepare yourself for that.
Of yours, this thing is a light that's better than your love.